You're listening to Sophie's Parlor edition of Jazz and Justice Radio. I'm Helen Viksnins, your diva of the day, and I am honored to be joined on the air right now by Susan Erenrich. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And the reason why I invited Susan to join me is because she just launched a book, Grassroots Leadership in the Arts for Social Change. And Susie Erenrich is a social movement history documentarian, and you use the arts for social change to tell stories about transformational leadership, resilience, and societal shifts as a result of mobilization efforts by ordinary citizens. That's amazing, and the book is very, very a great resource, and I was wondering if you could tell us about what inspired you to pull the marvelous work together.
Well, thank you very much for your kind words. It actually came out of my doctoral program at Antioch University. I was in a PhD program in leadership and change, and that particular time I had no interest in leadership whatsoever. I enrolled in the program for the change part. At the time, all of the leadership practitioners and scholars were dealing with a top-down model, but one of my favorite people who used to be on WPFW, Dialogue with Dorothy Healy, she was a mentor to the director of the program. So when I enrolled, I thought, well, there's something here for me. And I struggled back and forth, and when it came time to do my doctoral dissertation, which was on artists creating dangerously for social change, there was no literature for my literature review. And I did not want to be one of the ABD statistics, meaning all but dissertations. Right. So I reached back into my sociology background. I'm a popular educator by training, and I thought, well, SNCC served as a great model for me because I've been chronicling and documenting SNCC for more than 25 years and was very much influenced by Paolo Ferreri and Ella Baker and Highlander and all the folks in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. But during my search, I found that the IWW, Industrial Workers for the World, otherwise known as the Wobblies, their motto was, "We are all leaders," and that's where my literature review began. So I creatively crafted something together, and when I graduated, I wanted to expand the leadership footprint. I didn't want other people to be like me, get to that stage where they've reached candidacy and there's nowhere for them to go because activists who are interested in horizontal, collaborative, collective models of leadership, that there's nothing out there to exist. So this is basically a building block, building a foundation for those moving forward.
Wonderful. And I especially appreciated the chapter by Holly Near on women and music, because this show has been the oldest continuous women's radio program, playing women's music from 1972. And so I was really interested to read that chapter. Where can people get the book?
Susie, well, they can get it. They can find it through the International Leadership Association. It's part of their Building Leadership Bridges series, and they'll see a little icon at the top of the screen. They can also purchase it through places like Amazon. I've had several book events in New York and the D.C. area where I've purchased the book so that I can make the book more accessible to people. And then I've also used it as a benefit, like the original launch in New York City was at People's Voice Cafe. So, but folks listening online, I would try one of those two places, the ILA or Amazon. Barnes & Noble has it, but I believe it's really overpriced. The problem is, even though it's an accessible book, and I believe, like C. Wright Mills, that people need to write for the masses, it's still considered an academic book, and academic books are usually astronomically priced. So I try to do what I can to make it more affordable for folks.
Right. I'm just going to remind everyone that the book is called Grassroots Leadership and the Arts for Social Change, and we're talking to Susie Erenrich. So where would you say that you'd see women taking larger roles in grassroots leadership?
I think they've always taken large roles in grassroots leadership. I mean, I feel that myself and a lot of others are standing on the shoulders of all the women that went before, going back as far as the suffrage movement, 1848 in Seneca Falls, and then, we're almost celebrating 100 years in 1920 when women first got the right to vote.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like there's been, the first wave of feminism, the second wave, the third wave. And so when I was very hopeful when I was a peace marshal during the January 21st Women's March, and estimates could be 1.2 million just here in Washington, but millions of women and men and, a very diverse, eclectic crowd of people from all over the world were standing up against turning the clock back. Mm-hmm. So I was very inspired. So I see women have always taken larger roles. I just think those roles have changed depending on the times.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So right now, is there some kind of trend that you can point out for us to be looking at?
That's not really I teach women's history, but looking at trends isn't really my area of expertise. It really is looking at the grassroots movement. Uh-huh. And as Howard Zinn, one of my favorite historians who wrote the People's History of the United States, always said, just because we don't see it being reported or we don't see it happening doesn't mean that there aren't movements all over the world bubbling up. Right. Whether it's through beginning with networking and then coalition building and community building and then segueing into movements, and then some of those go into policy and institutionalization, going back to taking it to the streets. So,
and that's what's happening now, really.
Yes, it is, definitely.
Yeah, great.
And I think because of this current administration and the climate, it's going to continue to grow.
Absolutely, because you just have to say something if you see something.
Yes, that's right. And we are seeing things.
Absolutely. So what's your next project coming up?
Well, I have several. I have a chapter in another book coming out in the fall. The book is called Leadership, Popular Culture, and Social Change. It's a chapter on women troubadours, horizontal leadership, and the Southern freedom struggle in Mississippi in 1964, a missing chapter in civil rights movement history. And that's with some of the women who were part of the Mississippi Caravan of Music, who were part of Freedom Summer, who went to help support the on-the-ground troops to break the back of Jim Crow. Mm-hmm. I also have a trilogy, a book that I'm working on. It started out as one book called Too Many Martyrs, Student Massacres at Orangeburg, Kent, and Jackson State during the Vietnam War era, but it got so big I had to cut it up into 3 different books. So I'm trying to get the first part of the trilogy done on Kent State by the 50th anniversary, and then go back to Orangeburg and Jackson State. We're coming up February 8th, 2018 will be the 50th anniversary of Orangeburg. The reason why I wanted to put them all in one place to begin with was because people paid more attention to white students getting killed on the university campus than the black students. But mm-hmm. nobody will touch the book as big as it is. Wow. There's more than 130 people involved. Also, I'm helping to plan. I do bookings for the People's Voice Cafe. I also produce concerts there in New York. So I have Carolyn Hester, who was part of the Greenwich Village scene, one of the early, as they call them, the chicks of the folk music scene back in the 60s. She just turned 80, so we're having a big birthday bash for her, a concert with tributes coming up in the fall. So a lot on my plate also, and I plan way ahead in 2018 doing a commemorative program for Victor Jara. It'll be the 45th anniversary from his execution after the coup in Chile. So a lot going on, a lot on my plate, but I love every minute of it. It's lots of fun.
Right, and it's your passion. It's your, you're doing it from your heart. So I think that's
well,
amazing.
I'm certainly not getting paid for any of it, so it's definitely a passion and lots of fun.
Absolutely. Well, we've been talking to Susan Erenrich about her book and her projects in grassroots leadership and the arts for social change. So thank you so much for taking the time and talking to us.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me.
My pleasure. And if you ever need to publicize anything again, you know where to find us at Sophie's Parlor.
Great. Well, I just want to let folks know if they want to mark their calendars early. On October 7th, I'll be doing another book event at Potter's House in Adams Morgan.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.